Good morning, everyone. B1, welcome to Blacklogic. So, we're going to give a contextualized breakdown of the Kamala Harris interview with Brent Baier of Fox News. Give me 1 second here. Don't want any distractions. This will be very quick. I just want to give a quick breakdown in case some of you guys have missed this interview. I believe it was a very powerful interview because he was asking direct questions and not to alter the way that you may look at this very neutrally, but I'll give somewhat of a premise because Brent Baier of Fox News is giving this interview just weeks before the election. And Kamala Harris, in my opinion, instead of addressing the serious policy issues on jobs, the economy, and immigration, and her record directly, Kamala spent much of her time deflecting, passing the buck, and serving up a word salad buffet that'll leave you just so confused and discombobulated of which she is actually stating. Okay. And to speak truth to power, before we get into it, so I don't have to cover this later, Brent Baier referenced a video and played a clip from Donald Trump talking about the enemy within. And he did admit that he made a mistake with the wrong clip during the Harris interview. Okay, so we're gonna nip that in the bud so we don't have to cover that later. So this is more of a contextualized breakdown, somewhat of a reaction video. Fair use, fair use. The purpose of this is for commentary, news, and information. So with that being said, let's get right into it.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have, and you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico.
Now, before this interview actually really get into the heart of the matter, it's only 26 minutes. We have to understand that throughout this interview, Harris leans hard into the narrative that Congress or the previous administration is to blame for much of what she hasn't been able to achieve. Now, this is a common tactic she's employed, pinning legislative inaction on opposition from Republicans and the mess allegedly left behind by Donald Trump. Yet this excuse is wearing thin, especially when she's had 4 years in office as president. For example, when pressed about the administration's broken immigration policies, as we're going over here now, she deflects toward the need for bipartisan support and blamed Trump's policy as a root cause of the border crisis. Now, she stated, let's get to the point, but never gives an answer of the amount of illegal immigrants that because of all the retraction and revoking of the Trump border policies that have allowed over 6 million illegal immigrants inside the country and since the administration of Harris and Biden. Here's a problem. The Biden-Harris administration had a Democratic majority in Congress during its early years, which means they were windows of opportunity to pass meaningful immigration reform, and yet little was achieved. Instead of owning up to this, Harris redirects, saying Congress needed to act. However, legislation like the DREAM Act, which aims to protect illegal immigrant children, has lingered without aggressive action or new proposals from her office. She's been dodging these questions about all sorts of things. So let's see if we can get through this, because this is one of the tactics that they love to use, because avoid accountability on immigration. Because here's another moment where Harris responds on immigration, a contentious issue given the administration's failure to secure the southern border. Harris didn't provide any clear answers on this, family. She has not. And this we have to be made aware of.
And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the. Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish.
You had the
please.
White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they didn't bring up that bill.
Responding to the point you're raising,
okay,
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And
this is when Kamala Harris gets into word salad, where she's now coming up with these non sequiturs of information and building a story that does not answer the question correctly, or not even correctly, family, directly.
Our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did. And we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States.
This is what I was referring to.
Who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused.
This is what I was referring to when I stated that there was a very contentious issue when it comes to illegal immigration and how Kamala didn't provide clear answers on this. And he's been doubling and tripling down on how they plan to so-called prevent illegal workers from flooding the labor market and illegal immigration as a whole. So instead of answering the question directly, she stated, again, deflecting towards Donald Trump, how he killed this bill in Congress. He called up his friends or whoever, his other constituents or lobbyists or other political influencers, and how he got this bill killed. And this is the reason for illegal immigration. That's what Kamala is alluding to, but she is directly deflecting the fact that She had the opportunity to keep Donald Trump's illegal immigration policies active. That way, 6 million, 20 million illegal immigrants will not be in the country. And a portion of them are causing to increase crime and doing some of the most heinous acts that America has ever seen, especially in a short time frame during the Biden-Harris administration. Now, we have to understand when we come to the illegal workforce that we have in America, that it directly affects and disproportionately impacts Black American workers. But instead, she generalizes placing blame on systematic issues and deflecting that issue and those problems towards Donald Trump. These are the tactics of the Democrats time in and time out, how they fearmonger us about the Republicans. And I'm not stating go and vote for Republicans. I'm not stating that because I'm not a Republican or a Democrat myself, nor independent. But we have to look at the political class that have been luring us to vote for them, not making any concrete promises and lying to our face consistently since the 60s. And we have not received, we have not seen any systemic changes within our communities and even in our personal lives. This dodging is very dangerous because it hides the reality that Kamala Harris is not fit to be president, let alone Donald Trump isn't be fit. But people are jumping on board with Donald Trump because of his economic policies. And granted, it is in his favor because we have a very torn apart economy where inflation is high. Everything, if you want to finance things, are very, very high. Food prices have increased, so on and so forth. But again, when you don't answer questions, and that's why I call all politicians lieticians, all of them, believe me, lie in some form or fashion. They overinflate. They never underinflate, but they overinflate all their answers, and they simply don't answer the question.
On fixing
Six
it.
Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Bret,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that
The question here resides, is Kamala Harris indirectly, or let alone the Biden administration, that includes Kamala Harris, is indirectly to blame for the deaths of those 3 women because they were raped, they were tortured, and they were killed by illegal immigrants? You get what I'm getting at? The chances are, if the policies that Donald Trump put in place were still active, what would have been the percentage, would have been the chances of those 3 ladies being here today with us? And so the interviewer here, Bret Baier, is asking her, do you owe those families an apology? Because they probably wouldn't have been in the country if you didn't revoke a lot of the active border policies that would have stopped or decreased the amount of illegal immigrants inside the country. So, of course, she once again deflected from this questions as well, or taking any accountability, let alone full accountability, to answering and or being indirectly responsible for the deaths of these 3 young women.
if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Bret.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss, sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with.
I wonder will there ever be a day where politicians not necessarily take accountability of those young ladies' death because they're in action on border security, but apologize to a point where I wish I would have done better on the border that could have reduced the amount of crime in America, that may have prevented those illegal immigrants from raping and killing those young women. But again, family, when we are looking at these interviews, we can't be one-sided. We can't just be one-sided because you believe yourself to be a Democrat or you're on the side of the interviewer because he's part of Fox News and you're Republican. We have to look at it very neutrally and how these logicians never really answer questions and never take responsibility of their actions or inactions, whether be the enact of a legislation and or bill or the lack thereof. And again, when we're going to get some politicians that politic and actually be bipartisan, that effectively pass bills and legislation that will help the American people. We never really get that. And so that is why a lot of people are taken to the couch. That's why a lot of people are sitting out this election. And it's not because you're anti-American. That's not because you're anti-Constitution. It's not because you're anti-voting. What you see here are two unfit candidates. One may be better than the other, and people are choosing the less of two evils. That's your choice. I just choose not to choose evil. And when it comes to these things, family, the 3+ years, 3.5, 3 years, 9 months that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden has been in office, a lot of these things they could have fixed. A lot of these things they could have put in place and get the ball rolling. They have done none of that. And that is what you have to look at. It's kind of like giving someone a second chance, right? Let's take, for instance, you're in a relationship and you're with her and you're with him, whoever it may be, and they've been cheating on you for 3 years and 9 months. And they say, well, you just give me one more chance. I'm not going to cheat on you anymore. How are you to believe ever since that person has been with you, they've been cheating on you for 3 years and 9 months with multiple people, and all of a sudden you give them one more chance? They're going to be faithful to you? I don't think so.
With an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in
her?
all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you.
Now to her point, family, the immigration system has always been broken in America. And that's why we've always had a great level of illegal immigrants inside the country. But I think to the interviewer's point, and I'm not speaking for him, but to his point, those policies that were in place at least slowed down immigration to a significant amount. And when Biden and Harris became in office, those things was retracted, redacted, revoked, and illegal immigration exploded under the Biden-Harris administration. Now, to her point, I do agree. Our immigration policy, our immigration issue has always been an issue, but we have to look at the significance and how illegal immigration had exploded under the Biden-Harris administration. And that's a key note we have to continue to keep forever so in our minds as she's speaking and trying to deflect of how, again, she's not answering the question.
Investigate, and you are a serious journalist, they will tell you we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that that's going to get fixed, Brett.
Well,
that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question.
But
there were
that's how the
90
system
plus
works.
executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's...
Now, these same Border Patrol agents sided with Donald Trump, and the interviewer is asking her, why do you believe they did that? I get it. They want support. No, Kamala, they don't believe in you. They don't believe in the policies that you have revoked that were essentially assisting them in their duties and their job of protecting the border and securing the border. That's the point.
That's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
No, but let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel, to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what? You got to
happened
take
during
responsible for what
his
happened in your
presidency.
administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in
So
black and white.
would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars?
This is what I was referring to about the deflection that she always deflects to Donald Trump. Let's take, for instance, family, that these same laws were in place during Donald Trump's presidency. Not only did he not promote it, he didn't even mention it, but she has gone on stage and mentioned these laws and or support that the federal government would assist prisoners with transgender surgeries while they are in prison. So, and again, we have to look at these things because she is promoting a lot of the degeneracy and federal funding of things that should not be federal funded, in my opinion, of course. But nonetheless, I wonder what your take is.
For gender reassignment
I will
surgeries?
follow the law, just as I
have a
think
say
Donald
in
Trump would
this.
say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think it's real. He spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote.
One thing I would like to add, and this is not in defense of Donald Trump at all, but she kept stating, oh, he spent $20 million running these ads to fear the American people. We all know that the Democratic Party is mostly funded by Apex that pushes their agenda, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that both parties actually use to promote their propaganda, to coerce, to trick, to manipulate, and to fearmonger the American people into voting for either side. So again, what she's saying is a non sequitur, really doesn't mean anything. But this is how she kind of gathers up her stories, where she tends to repeat herself over and over again. But it's something to pay close attention to.
And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on plans for the American
we'll
people, I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy. His would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as president of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future. And
quick note here, family. If you have two piles of shit and one has a bow tie on it, does it take away the fact that both of them are piles of shit and another just looks a little better, looks a little prettier, right? Still smells the same, still the same thing. And what I'm getting at is she has her own divisiveness, but she ties it up and she beautifies it in a way that is more palatable than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is very blatant, this kind of open with it, with no decorum, with no political attributes, this nothing. He just says what he wants to say, how he wants to say it, and it's not very presidential. Now, she does the same thing, but once again, she pretties up a little bit, just like she was stating that kind of caught Donald Trump during the debate. is people leave your debates early. That has nothing to do politically. That signifies to the American people the policies you're going to in place to help them live their lives in the most powerful country in the world.
And a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations.
I'm going to take a small pause here, family, because Darlene states that I need to stop, and I can't believe you at this point of anything you put up. So what I'm going to do is give Darlene, if she's still in the room, an opportunity to explain what she means by that. Okay, so bear with me here, family. I'm gonna see if Darlene has the opportunity to clarify what she's stating. So I put an invite link inside the chat. So Darlene, if you still there, and this is not a debate. This is not a debate. I just want you to clarify what you mean by you can't believe me at this point, because I want to hear your thoughts if it's possible. That way you don't have to type into eternity. So the invite link is in the chat, and you can join with or without your video. You have that option. So I'll give you a moment there, and I'll get back to the broadcast. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, darling, go ahead and pull up and see what we can get out of it. Well, that's very contradicting, because when asked the question, you basically said that you won't change anything that you were doing when you was with Joe Biden. I'm not understanding that, because she's contradicting herself with each video clip. Okay, you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but when asked what would you do differently, you basically said that you wouldn't do anything differently. And then now you double down and say, well, it would be a Kamala Harris presidency. You're not saying anything. And this was all I was referring to, family, of the word salad of Kamala Harris, because when the interview Baier cornered her with questions about inflation and its devastating impact on the working class Americans, especially Black communities, we're already struggling with housing affordability. Instead of addressing specific failures of the administration's response, Kamala veered off topic, boasting about investments in infrastructure and climate initiatives, and we'll get there. But she uses a lot of buzzwords to change the subject without offering concrete solutions for everyday folks dealing with skyrocketing grocery prices and rent hikes. The Inflation Reduction Act, often revered and touted by Democrats, didn't provide the immediate relief many expected. It's mostly funneled resources into climate programs and pharmaceutical pricing, not broader inflation relief. That's not what it does. Oh my God, this is despicable. Oh, you guys couldn't hear. Hopefully, you guys can hear me now. Let me know if you can hear me. But none. Corey Hall, I see you guys. Cornelius Jones. Let me know if you can hear me now. I'll try to back that part up just a little bit in case you guys couldn't hear that. But if you guys didn't hear it, basically, he was asking her how the country is going to be, how the country is going to change. 79% of Americans said that the country is moving in the wrong direction. And when he was stating that you've been president, you've been VP for 3.5 years, she reverted back to stating, well, I'm trying to turn the page on the past decade. Well, the past decade still includes your 3.5 years with Joe Biden. And what did you guys do to significantly improve and or change? Thank you, Corey Hart. Appreciate it. To change that. So again, hopefully you guys can hear this soundbite, because I think it's imperative to the interview how she consistently deflects and tries to thwart the responses that she curated, or just, I don't know, just coming up with it as she goes. But this is how I like Kamala Harris, believe it or not. I like her straight up, no chaser. No one trying to give her cues and quotes and responses in her ear, because this is the true nature of the presidential candidate that you're seeing. And this is how she's going to respond. This is how she's going to react on the world stage. He doesn't have any idea what she's talking about, and neither do we, because she said, well, Donald Trump has been running for president. What that has to do with you and Joe Biden actually being in office and can do something to rectify the issues when we're referring to this topic of America being on the wrong track? She's talking about, you know what I'm talking about? He's like, no, I don't have no idea what you're talking about, because neither does the American people. Now, is it me or is there a stark difference when she answered certain questions? Anytime, and this is just my belief, this is my observation, this may not be yours, family. When she's about to lie, she takes a slight pause, she stutters a little bit, and then she starts to kind of talk around it before she tried to answer it. Maybe it's just me though.
I'm setting up with this stuff. I got him down here. Oh, police got it. Yeah. What did it do?
I think I've heard enough, family, and I think you guys have heard enough as well. This interview, in my opinion, was a critical moment for Kamala Harris to really convince voters that she has a coherent plan moving forward. Now, we know quite recently, if you guys catch my broadcast from Wednesday, how I broke down the so called opportunity loans that she is trying to offer Black men. Again, I stated loans. And these loans, these million loans that she's willing to hand out, I don't know the exact amount from which they start and which they end, meaning how much can you essentially borrow from the federal government. And we know federal government rates are usually low. I would say Historically, they don't go over 6%. But as we look at the so-called opportunity loan, she's also offered this to other communities as well. So again, this is one of these lift all programs that include other people, because she stated Black men and others. Anytime you have and, or, in addition to, also, that including other groups. So it's nothing significantly that going to improve Black men into starting businesses. For one, it's a loan, and that it's forgivable up to 20 grand. My thing is, if that's the case, then how about have these men create businesses, verifiable, forms of formation, LLCs, et cetera, S corps and C corps, and then give them a grant of 20,000. So basically, you start in the hole. Of course, these loans have to be predicated upon your credit score, et cetera, which is another systemic problem in the Black community. A lot of us have low credit scores because we have not made some of the right choices with our money, because out of the way of the system and the conditioning that we have. This is a byproduct of systematic oppression and racism, how we tend to extend our finances more than what they really are. Some people may say that's a cop-out, that's an excuse, but this is suppression and oppression as we see it and we know it. So we're not living in their reality, Black folk. We're living in our reality. And granted, there's those who knew exactly what they were doing and put them own selves in debt by sheer stupidity. I will not leave that out as well. But she doesn't have a coherent plan that will move America forward, let alone foundational Black Americans. But instead, we get vague responses. We get these vague answers from her that is a bunch of word salad, deflection, that she really never answers anything. She has no detailed legislative proposals. But one thing I will say throughout this entire video, she has a whole lot of finger pointing. Almost every single response had the Republicans or Donald Trump inside of it, and he's giving her an interview about her and her administration with Joe Biden. Harris' reliance on political talking points and wordy non-answers only made it clear to me that she struggles to stand on her record. That's what she struggles at. She doesn't even struggle. She veers away from it. She just flat out lies. And that's why these lieticians, whether it be Republicans or Democrats or independents, tend not to sway one way or another. Family, stay very, very neutral. This is not your sports team. This is not your sports team where no matter how bad they do, you're always supporting them. No. This is much serious than that. That's a game. This is real life. These policies or these non-legislative policies can trickle down in your state, in your city, in your community, and in your own personal lives. Now, we understand on the federal level, we shouldn't waste too much time here, because we know that the laws that affect the most are those on the state and local level. But nonetheless, federal policy has a tendency to avalanche into state and local as well over the course of time. Yeah, maybe legislative is passed in 2024, but it really doesn't take an effect to midway of 25, let alone 2026. So we have to look at those things as well. She does all of these political talking points and non-answers nearly every interview that she has. It's clear, again, to me, that she struggles on her record and a clear vision for America. Is this kind of evasion that leaves voters frustrated and disengaged? Most of those who are tired of promises without progress. But these are the two choices that we're left with. It's so funny, it hurts sometimes. Now, Mike Ken says that I'm in a cult and whatever I say is meaningless. Again, family, you know how I roll. I always invite people up who disagree or agree. It really doesn't matter. But Mike, I have my invite link to the broadcast in the chat, and you can join with or without your video, and we can have a discussion on the viewpoints that you stated here. Okay? And I'll read some of your other comments. Let's put 2 interviews made by this anchor, one with Trump and one with Harris. One is with Trump. This anchor pushed back lightly, and now Trump hates him. He's combating a North spec. Very good point, and that's because it's Fox News. Just as well, if Donald Trump goes on CNN, ABC, MSNBC, pretty much anything that ends with a C, he's going to be treated as though Kamala Harris was treated here. And that's good. That's balance. Because we have the same when we're looking at MSNBC, ABC, these are most independently, independent political viewing news agencies. And we understand that CNN is a Democratic news leaning agency. That are funded by a lot of these Democratic politicians, just as well as Fox News is funded by Republicans. So again, there is balance in the news space, but you're not going to have the same anchor people interview both candidates the same way because they lean one way or another. I mean, that's self-explanatory. So don't think that I'm here bashing Kamala Harris and I'm anti-Kamala Harris. I'm anti-Latitions. I go hard on Donald Trump. I go hard on Kamala Harris. If a hit dog is hurt, it hollers. So we understand where a lot of the people in the chat views lies, because anytime I do hit pieces or contextualize intellectual breakdowns of Kamala Harris, they have a problem. But the one question I always have is, tell me where I'm lying. And again, I put the invite link inside the chat for those who may want to have a discussion or make their comments live. And again, you don't have to use your video. I don't require you guys to reveal who you are. Everyone knows how I look. I always show myself. But today, brother need a shave. Okay? Just need a little shave. But nonetheless, I had that invite link inside the chat for those who may agree or disagree. But I know that, unfortunately, and I say this with all hair on my chest, there's a lot of cowards who tend not to come up and have that discussion, because I'm very cordial. There's decorum on my platform. I'll allow you to speak, but don't ramble. And then you have to allow me to respond. We may not come on a clear issue, but maybe the people in the audience may take something from it. Maybe you have more prominent points than I, or maybe not. But family, you have to always challenge these politicians and judge them very neutrally, because you'll have people to swing one way or another because of their political views or because of their manipulation and psychological breakdown from their party, and how one party may fear one party into another. Meaning the Democrats are scaring you about, if the Republicans get in office, you're going to have KKK members march down your road and take your children hostage. That's what the Democrats will do. And then the Republicans will come in and say, well, the Democrats are going to make all of your children homosexuals and they're going to give the country away to the illegal immigrants. They all have their own rhetoric. They all have their own fear-mongering tactics. The issue here is that the Democrats use identity politics to win over the black vote, because without the black vote, the Democrats won't win. The Republicans use this tactics as well. They just don't want black people to vote, and it's working, but not because of the fear they're promoting. We see the results. We see the results that the Democrats' non-action has had. All right, we see we got Corey in the back channel.
Hello.
Corey, your background is loud, brother. Your background is loud. There's a lot of feedback coming in on side this end.
Log back in.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead, brother. What's on your mind? All right, Corey dropped off. Maybe we can get him back again. Dana Brown said Harris Walls 2024. Okay, that's your choice. Again, I'm not pushing anyone to vote for Donald Trump. Okay, I'm not MAGA. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm going to read some of your other notes here. This is Bruce White. It says that the Fox News anchor apologized for misleading viewers with a video clip of Trump. What else is Fox being deceptive with when America was great for us? Absolutely. I pointed that out as well. Here it is right here. Bret Baier admits mistake with Trump clips during Kamala Harris interview. Okay. He states here he admitted to the wrong clip with Donald Trump talking about the enemy within. So, oh, you guys can't see it. I'm tripping. Let me make sure I'm showing you the screen over here. Here we go. So here's the news piece that he actually publicly admitted. Okay. And that's good on his point. Him being an anchor, him being a journalist, because we know a lot of these people are paid by political parties, whether they be the shadow government or the federal government. But no, he came out and stated that he made a mistake, and I highlighted right here for the viewers. Okay, it's transparency on Blacklogic. We don't do in lies. We don't deal in lies here. Nonetheless, it said claims role during his exclusive interview with Kamala Harris. He stated that he made a mistake. All right. We see we got our brother Corey back up. Okay, did he drop off again? Okay, thought we had him up here, but nonetheless, Corey, you dropped off again. We got our good brother Jermaine Anderson in the room. Thank you, Jermaine, for moderating, sir. I do appreciate your contribution to the channel. He's been here for a long time. Okay. Corey, what's on your mind, brother?
Hey, how you doing, man? I just got a quick question about this process of I guess having her to represent the Democratic Party. The Democrats push a lot of democracy. They say democracy, but even though we live in a democratic republic. But my thing is, I want to ask this question to you: where was the democracy when they just gave her the nominee for the to be the candidate for the Democratic Party? Why didn't they have a primary?
All right, let me answer that question. I'm gonna put you on mute very quickly. That's a very important question, Corey, and I'm glad you asked it. Because first and foremost, you stated that we live in a democratic republic. Now, according to the Constitution, we do not live in any sort of democracy. Even though when you talk to people who know the Constitution, they throw the word democratic in. If anything, we live in a socialized republic. But nonetheless, I'll stick to the guns, and the Constitution state that we live in a republic, meaning though, after you cast your vote, you have no more power. After you cast your vote, you have no more voice because you have a representative that is going to act on your behalf. Because we understand in a true democracy, every choice, every piece of legislation, every bill will go through a public vote, and the majority of the people will speak for that legislation being passed. That's the answer to your question, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you're in agreement with me that some kind of primary should have been ran before they just gave her the nomination for the Democratic Party, right?
Absolutely. We're now acting the same way that when Donald Trump got on stage and said some things about basically him being a dictator, that he'll be a dictator day one. He made that comment, and of course, Democrats exploded that. But to your point, that is a communistic dictatorship when the American people didn't have the opportunity to vote for her. They could have did a 3 or 5 day block of voting to see if they wanted Kamala Harris to be the running mate, to be the president nominee for the Democratic Party. They didn't do that. What occurred was your representatives, without any sort of sequestering from the American people or any contribution from the American people on who the presidential nominee would be for the Democratic Party, because again, it goes back to the Constitution. You have representative that acts on your behalf. Thus, when you vote, you have no power.
Right. Exactly. And the one more thing I wanted to kind of comment on, get your opinion on. Why I don't understand why it's always a spin to make it seem like black men are misogynistic, like we don't want a woman president. I don't mind having a woman president that's qualified to run the country. I mean, America's a corporation, and you have to know what you're doing. You have to run this like a business. For the longest time, she's been a prosecutor, and I just think she wants to convict, man. You know, I don't really trust prosecutors like that, in my humble opinion, to run things, because they're always trying to get accolades and they're always trying to go for the conviction. And that's just my thoughts on it. But I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I can go down a very dark path with this, Corey, because this is very systemic on how they portray and stereotype black men to be in Pookies and Ray Rays, having sex with multiple women and leaving multiple babies, and not supporting our own women, being very abusive, physically abusive, verbally abusive. And they blasted that all through news media as well as in Hollywood of how black men are, even though majority of murders and mass murders occur in white families when white men go and kill their entire family. They never blast that. If you guys catch our great brother, Professor Black Truth, he always does his crime reports on Friday. And a lot of those crime reports are of white men killing their families for one reason or another, or killing multiple people. But none of those things are left to light. But what they trend to do is use a lot of depravity and degeneracy within the black community to depict an image of how they want people to treat us, how they want people to look at us all the time. Not even though that majority of black Americans on the middle class, majority of black Americans are one of the rising groups and try to start their own business next to the East Indians that have come over here legally and illegal. I digress. That's another video. But nonetheless, these are some of the systemic stereotypes that they're using to portray a picture to guilt and shame black men to once again vote for a candidate based on a couple things, based on identity politics, that, oh, you're not going to, what Van Jones say, oh, she's an African-American woman, she's a black woman, totally erasing her Indian side, knowing that that was a systemic thing that people were bringing up. Van Jones, when doing a video clip outside of a Kamala Harris rally, never stated that she was so-called African-American and Indian. He only stated that she was African-American and East Indian to, African-American and Black American, to deceive people that even if she is, she's still both, right? According to her lineage and what we have seen through evidence that people have proposed on all these different social media sites. But nonetheless, they use these tactics to shame and guilt black men because they know we have this inert ability to be better. We're striving for greatness. But again, they would like to guilt and shame us, even to the point they had your good old boy Barack Hussein Obama on to do that very same thing. What's your final thoughts?
Yeah. But I mean, not to cut you off, but on her father's birth certificate says Jamaican. I mean, Jamaican is a nationality. I was looking at the thing with Candace Owens, even though I don't like Candace Owens because she's always trying to denigrate black people. Anything is something come up with a black person, she on top of that, but she won't say nothing against the white man. But she did do some like background and some research that states her father was Irish, and he put a nationality as Jamaican on his birth certificate, and that they owned slaves. They have a whole slave plantation back in Jamaica. But anyway, my final thoughts on the whole thing is, I think they would have did better if they had an open primary or somebody else to run against Trump. As far as my concern as a black man, I'm not voting for it because of policy. It has nothing to do with being misogynistic or not wanting a woman to run things or anything like this. It's strictly on policies, and her policies are terrible.
All right, thank you, brother, for your contribution. I do appreciate it. That was a good boy, Corey. And to his point about the identity politics piece, yeah, we're speaking about nationality. Her father, who taught at one of the universities in America, he actually dealt in Marxism. If you guys are familiar with that, you need to check out the works from Karl Marx. Very intriguing things. But nonetheless, someone in the chat, DLN Chalk, stated that we were voting for Biden and Kamala. If Biden could not continue, who would take over? Your comments is deceiving. I believe you're misunderstanding the context in the conversation we were having, DLC Chalk. What we're stating is that she is now the nominee. Okay, she's now the nominee for president, just because, again, they're on this term together. The whole new term, they would have probably ran as a group, but she wouldn't have automatically become the presidential candidate, right? They have to, again, win over the American people in order to be the presidential nominees. You just don't get elected back in just like that. No, there's a process, okay? So this is when people are talking about that this is a democratic republic, because there's a democratic process that the American people go out and vote to see who will be the nominee, and then you go and vote again to see who will be the president. So that is the premise of that response, DNC Chalk. If you have any other comments you would like to make, I'll put an invite link inside the chat so you can come and we can speak personally. No attack, just a discussion, okay? So if anybody else have any comments, let me know. DNC Chalk stated that don't forget Trump also said illegals are taking the black jobs he wants you picking up. That's true, though. That's true, no. And we have to understand just because he uses the word black and jobs and immigrants doesn't is not derogatory in any manner. So if majority of black Americans are without degrees and we are picking up blue collar jobs, working at manufacturing, shipping, retail, all of these factory and assembly lines that we're doing because we don't have, higher education. And then you have illegal immigrants coming in and the employer laying off thousands of people who are making anywhere from $12 to $20 an hour to hire people making anywhere from $5 to $10 an hour. Then essentially they are taking black jobs. Not only black jobs, they're taking white jobs, they're taking legal Hispanic jobs and other legal people who are different nationality and or race jobs who are legal to the country. So essentially they're taking all our jobs. But I don't feel any indifferentness because he said the word black. That's what we are. Again, DLC Chalk, there's an invite link inside the chat. You can click that link and join with or without your video. I don't have to see if you don't want me to, but nonetheless, you can come in and join. I'm not going to keep reading your comments. So you either want to have a discussion or you don't. So yeah, family, if you guys have any questions, whether you agree or disagree with the discussion of this breakdown, this sort of a reaction video to the Kamala Harris interview with Bret Baier of Fox News, come on up before I end the broadcast here. I thank you all for joining me here midday, whether it be on the East Coast, West Coast, or Midwest. I just want to do this very quickly because I haven't been doing videos, haven't been doing broadcasts on Fridays. If so, I'm going to come back and do my regular videos Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I usually release shorts on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you're not a subscriber to the channel, subscribe to the channel if you would like. Give this video an up or down thumbs in case you liked it or disliked it. But nonetheless, I thank you all for joining me here this morning as well as afternoon. You guys have a great and wonderful weekend. Be one.